Welcome to the Counselling Armchair, hosted by the counselling team at RMIT University. This podcast aims to help you manage your university life so you can be at your best. We'll be sharing with you tips on student life here and ways to enhance your mental well-being.
Welcome back to another episode, everyone. Today I've got a couple of guests with me to talk about the ultimate hot topic for anyone who's ever a student or ever been a student and know the feeling of what it's like to procrastinate. So yes, we're going to be talking about procrastination. My two guests are psychologists at the Counselling and Psychological Service who facilitate a workshop about this. So thanks for coming along today, Emma and Megan.
Thanks for having us.
I understand that it's gearing up to be a most busy time for us here. So we might just get started. And maybe perhaps first of all, love to hear a bit about yourselves. Maybe Megan, you want to go first?
Hello, everyone. I've been a counsellor with RMIT since 2019 and I work at the city campus. So if you want to come and see me, that's where I am. I've got an interest in working probably in lots of different ways, in terms of different modalities with clients, but really interested in somatic therapies. So I might bring that into the work that I do with clients, sometimes into procrastination work too.
Fantastic.
Thanks. I'm Emma. I'm also one of the psychologists based at the city campus. And I've been with the RMIT team for about 18 months now. I, a bit like Megan, sort of like to use a bit of a mix of different ways of working with students. I like to bring quite a lot of compassion-focused sort of work into the therapy space, which is very relevant as well to this procrastination topic.
Absolutely. I can imagine that we're all going to be like tuning in very acutely to this episode today. And like I said, I've been very much looking forward to chatting with you guys about this because, we've all been students ourselves. And I guess speaking personally, I know firsthand what it feels like when I've got piles of study to do. And I know there's been a bit of a run-in joke. It took a while for me to complete my master's thesis. So, and just can't bring myself to it. But instead, what I try and do is maybe turn on the TV, watch another episode of this and that, or my room looks, a bit messy. All of a sudden need to do some spring clean. So get all sorts of caught up in, other activities instead of the actual study. I mean, I know it's bad and, yet I can't help it. So in thinking about that, like, I feel like, is there something wrong with me or what's wrong with me really, Emma?
Oh, well, I guess I'd sort of start by thinking a little bit about there probably is nothing wrong with you. This is something that we all do. And I will admit and put my hand up and say I procrastinate. I'm not a student anymore, but there's certainly things in my life that I put off doing. And so it's a really common thing that we all do as part of being human. And I'd probably even go as far to say I don't think I've come across anyone in my life that doesn't or hasn't procrastinated something at some point in their life. So I think this is a really sort of a starting space of applying the bit of the compassion lens that I like to work with students around is actually being kind to yourself and recognizing this is something you're not in alone. We're all kind of doing it, and it's something that we sort of see as part of being human. That being said, there's probably some things that are keeping your procrastination going and some ways that you might find to work on being able to kind of break that cycle, because it can feel like a really vicious thing to feel stuck in.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, before I forget, and I forgot to mention that a bit earlier, is, in our podcast today, maybe I'm going to be asking a couple of questions to either of you, but certainly feel free to jump in at any stage to either of you guys if you want to actually add some stuff to our comments. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, like there may be some things that are like you were saying, is sustaining this kind of behavior. But I also think about like, well, I used to be a good student in school, like used to be like able to apply myself and do things like straight away and get my homework done, and that hadn't been a problem or an issue in the past. I get to uni or I start studying, and it's all of a sudden I feel like, oh yeah, the one episode after another, binge watching something sounds so much more attractive or maybe so much more fun than actually sitting down and applying myself. I just feel like sometimes I go, but how in the world did I get here? How did this kind of behavior maybe originate, or where in the world did this come from, Emma?
It's a really good question. I think, we were sort of talking before about how, as our stress levels kind of go up, our procrastination tends to go up as well. So we often don't find ourselves, we might, but it's not as common to be procrastinating the things that we enjoy doing or the things that are not so stressful for us. So we sort of might find ourselves, procrastinating those stressful study tasks or things outside of study that feel hard for different reasons to us. And I guess looking at the example that you're just kind of giving, Yvonne, of going from school into uni, that's a really big adjustment period, that does come with, can come with quite a lot of stress for students, and it's a really different learning environment, much more sort of self-directed, and those sorts of factors might contribute to or sort of increase the likelihood of someone finding themselves stuck in that kind of procrastination sort of loop. And so I guess when we're thinking about procrastination, we're kind of thinking, there's something that we want to get done or we think is important to us to get done, but for some reason we just find ourselves like putting it off or postponing it or doing something else instead. And so I think it's about kind of getting a bit kind of curious with yourself and sort of thinking, well, what is it that kind of comes up for me when I think about doing that task that maybe, I start to think of it being really boring and there's, much more fun and exciting things to do. So I go off and do something fun, or maybe I feel really sort of stressed because I'm thinking it needs to be perfect. And I shouldn't start doing it unless I can make it absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And, as humans, we're pretty good at sort of detecting or noticing when we might start to feel a bit uncomfortable and finding ways to escape from that. And that's kind of in essence what we're doing when we procrastinate. We're sort of, I suppose, sort of trying to find a reason not to do that thing that brought up that bit of an uncomfortable feeling, whether it's boredom or feeling stressed or whatever it might be for you.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm labeling, okay, maybe cleaning. I don't enjoy vacuuming, but all of a sudden cleaning or vacuuming sounds much more better than actually sitting and doing research or doing some reading.
Yes,
so the label I put on that.
That's what I do as well. Procrastinating cleaning. It's amazing how those cleaning tasks seem so important all of a sudden.
Yes.
And I think it's our way of we come up with these reasons, I've got to get that done. That's more important to do right now, or I don't have everything I need to get started on study. So there's no point in making, I don't have enough time to get a good chunk done now. So there's no point in making a start. We come up with all of these reasons why we, can't get started on that thing.
Yeah, all of a sudden my space has to look a certain way. I have to have all my stationery ready and available. It has to be a certain pattern. Let me, go down to like kikki.K or Smiggle or somewhere and organize myself that way. Yeah, it's a real issue there. And then all of a sudden I'm burning money in my pocket or something like that because I've got to get myself organized. And all of that has to be done before I can start studying or doing my assignment.
Yeah. And so the thing with procrastination, I think, is it kind of, keeps itself going because in that initial moment, we generally feel pretty good. Like we've kind of got away from that thing that was stressing us out. And maybe we've done something that, felt fun to do. Like we've gone and bought some new stationery or maybe we've done something that we feel like, a sense of achievement about doing, like we've done that cleaning that we might have been putting off at another time. And so that kind of feels good to us, and that tends to make us more inclined to want to keep doing it. But what we sort of see with procrastination is it's the long-term kind of consequences that are not so good, the all-nighters, those last minute all-nighters to finish an assessment, or the consequences of not finishing assessment on time.
It's hard to think about those long-term consequences when it's like, oh, but my immediate reward is, well, I get, my place is looking neat and tidy, everything's all ready, and my room got to be set up. So I've got that immediate reward, or almost like instant gratification, that I can actually see in front of me is like, yeah, I did this and I feel productive some other way.
Yeah. And for those that want to come along to our webinar, we do play a bit of a video that actually talks about this, and I quite like the way the video talks about it. Is they call it the instant gratification monkey, and we've all got one of those in us that's looking and seeking for that instant kind of gratification, and so that's a big part of, or can be a big part of procrastination that keeps it going.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Sounds very intriguing. So you were talking about being curious about this idea of, what am I procrastinating? Can you guys say some more about that, either Megan or Emma?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key to understanding how to get through procrastination is you've got to understand why.
Right.
Why am I choosing to procrastinate? And like Emma was saying, is it just we kind of just want to do something fun right now, or is it because the thing that we have to do is causing us a lot of stress and we'd rather not be stressed? And, or is it that, that we're tired, or we're feeling like we don't have all of the things available to us? Is there some other reason that we're coming up with? Because that's going to give us the clue to kind of find our way through it. And what we would look at is that we sort of, the reason to why we come up with procrastination as a solution to our problems can come from how we're thinking about things. So often we want to investigate our thoughts around procrastination. And that sometimes those thoughts are sort of just not real, that do we need to have all of the correct stationery to start writing an assignment? Probably not.
Yeah.
That may not actually help us write it in any way, shape or form. We might feel better to have it, or like Emma was saying, we can sometimes feel a sense of satisfaction for having gone out and got it and feel like, yes, I did something towards my assignment, but it's completely not actually useful for writing the assignment at all. So yeah, I think we have to stop at the beginning there and actually go, wait a second, why does the stationery matter? Does it really matter? And start to pick apart and assess the reality of that thought, or the truth of that thought. Yeah.
So that's one way of dealing with it, because I guess the most popular question, or maybe it is one of the most popular question I'm sure you guys get asked is, how do I get rid of procrastination? Or can I wave a magic wand and it disappears? I can imagine that's probably the top questions you guys must get asked. Yeah.
Yep. And today you're in luck, Yvonne. I'm about to give you that magical wand.
Awesome.
It does exist, and here it is. No, unfortunately, it is the most commonly asked question, and there is no magical wand. I'm sorry. It is unfortunately more hard work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be hard work, I guess, is the short answer to that too, is that I think just being able to slow down and bring awareness to what's going on, that is going to be, in a way, a bit of a magic wand, because then if we slow down and recognize what just happened when I decided to turn on the TV, or what just happened when I decided to pick up the vacuum, then we can understand what's going on. And sometimes that's a quick solution, that we can say, no, actually, the vacuuming doesn't need to be done right this second. I could be more effective if I actually sit down and have a look at these assignments. So the awareness could be your magical wand in that respect, maybe. It's a very psychologist kind of answer, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess, sometimes and look, in the age of instant technology or things that are instantaneous, I think we all hope that we can wave something or wave a magic wand, or there's a magic bullet to our solution or to find the solution. And somehow, hey presto, I can just sit and apply myself. But it doesn't sound as straightforward than that. It's more, it sounds like there is a bit of maybe pausing and just being, pausing for a moment and actually like being aware of our own behaviors or action, and then recognizing that, hold on, like, is this actually what needs to be? Like, is this a priority, or is this what needs to be done right now? And if it isn't, then what did I actually set out to do to begin with? If it's reading through a chapter, if it's writing a literature review, and can I actually just be able to do that to start with and take it from there? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Your awareness might just start with recognizing what it is that I do when I procrastinate. That could be my clue. Maybe you go to cleaning. That's a frequent one for you, or scrolling on, TikTok or Reddit or whatever it is. You might be just bringing that awareness to when I'm doing that and getting curious about why I'm doing that right now.
So do you think that we all have, like, as in we engage in a bit of a pattern, yeah? Like, is that what you mean? Like, we all have our go-to when it comes to procrastination?
I think it sort of varies from person to person, but I think, there might be some patterns that you might be able to sort of pick out. And there might be some common things that you might be pulled to when you've got that urge to procrastinate.
Yeah. I know that in terms of, I think you guys have probably addressed some of this stuff in your webinars or workshop. Is there something in the more practical area that you can tell us or share? Say, for example, like a bit more of a pragmatic or practical strategy to address the procrastination? I might start with Emma.
I think you absolutely can. I think we've sort of been talking about what might underlie and keep the procrastination going, but I think the great thing about procrastination is you can actually work on it by putting in place some practical sort of strategies, and we go through quite a few in our workshop. I think part of finding the practical strategies is about working out what works for you, and so it actually is about a trial and error kind of process of sort of figuring out what you want to put into your practical toolkit to sort of use. And that's going to look different for everyone. And so there's lots of common ones. I think common ones that we kind of hear that come up maybe are around having an accountability buddy, someone that you might study with, or they might also be studying, and you might be messaging each other to keep each other accountable to keeping working on that essay or doing that research task. Some people like to start with the easiest task and build a bit of momentum and get things kind of going, but other people might say, actually, I'm going to get started with the hardest one, get that out of the way, and then I can sort of feel a sense of relief to sort of to get going on my studies. So I think it's about kind of working out what works for you, and being open to trying different things. But absolutely, you can work on procrastination with a whole host of different practical tools.
Yeah. And it sounds like it's a bit of a work in progress, bit of a, like you said, trial and error, but sounds like also maybe there's things people have done historically, maybe they don't realise that they've applied themselves to, and can actually still, maybe bring that up again, use it again, or keep going with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And so for listeners, maybe just, as some information for our listeners out there, like, what do you guys notice might be like a very popular or a workable strategy when we want to stop procrastinating, Megan?
Well, I think, unfortunately, a lot of students can tend to be a little bit perfectionistic, that there's a very all or nothing type vibe.
Oh, yeah.
That there is that sense of I've got to sit down, I've got to write the whole thing in one go, and it has to be perfect.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sounds familiar.
And and so I think that looking at how you can be flexible with yourself around that mindset is a big one for clients. And I think realizing that they're able to sit down and just do half an hour. You don't have to do the whole thing in one go, that you might just write a paragraph, or maybe you'll just do the essay plan, that it's sort of breaking things down into smaller bits and having a bit more flexibility with yourself. It also might be that, okay, well, maybe I start writing and the first line might not be perfect, but that's okay. I can keep going and I can go back and edit it later, that rather than thinking it has to be perfect first time, sometimes getting stuff down on paper or on the computer is better. We start to feel a bit of a relief, and it's easier to go back and edit than it is to start writing something from scratch. So yeah, I think probably a very popular strategy I notice with my clients is challenging that sort of black and white thinking and to start to look at it more flexibly. Yeah.
How interesting, because like in a previous podcast, we talked about imposter syndrome, and during that conversation, we spoke a little bit about like how people can get caught up in similar stuff, like around perfectionism and the black and white thinking, the all or nothing thinking. And it sounds like we're noticing maybe some of the messages actually just exercising some psychological flexibility, trying to be a bit more adaptable and trying to be a bit flexible within ourselves, not to be too hard, but also adjusting those expectations. And then the action's going to follow once we also have a different mindset or adjusting those expectations, that the actions are going to follow, and you can actually go back and correct stuff, edit stuff, for example, in this case. Awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a little secret is that often the best procrastinators are perfectionists. That's often what they're perfect at doing, is procrastinating.
I think we can all relate to a bit of that, don't we?
Yeah.
And I guess I was wondering about, like, in inviting you guys along today, what do you hope our listeners will take away from our discussion today?
Hopefully they've heard the magic wand, right? Hopefully they've got that and they've solved
all
their procrastination woes.
The Harry Potter store is going to run out of magic wands very quickly after this.
That's right. I mean, for me, I just hope that people can realize how normal it is, that it's quite common.
Yeah.
They're not the only one. And, to be able to slow that process down for themselves, to bring some awareness to what actually happens for me when I'm procrastinating.
Yeah.
As annoying as that is as a strategy, it's not the magic wand that we want, but yeah, slowing it down and understanding what happens for them in that process.
Yeah. Thank you. Emma?
Yeah, I think probably the same. I think recognizing, this is really common. And I think with that can come a bit more of an internal sort of voice that is encouraging towards ourselves and kind towards ourselves, rather than being harsh and critical of ourselves, because we really know that the harder we are on ourselves, probably the more likely we are going to be to procrastinate. So I hope something that people could take away from today is that it is common and it is part of being human, but there are absolutely ways that we can get curious about it and find ways to break that kind of cycle. And part of that might be being kind to ourselves.
And it sounds like from what you guys are describing, like this is so natural to to think that way or to act this way, especially with our studies and trying to apply ourselves when we also feel pressure internally, externally as well. And then if we can kind of just be aware and have some recognition of being able to notice moments that we get caught up in that procrastinating, either through the action or even thoughts of perfectionism. I must do this, otherwise I can't start my assignment. And then being able to actually maybe try and just try it, just to give it a go, just to write something down, for example, or just to sit at the desk and read for half an hour, something like that, and see how far we can go with that, and that way we can manage our expectations as well through the doing.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely.
Awesome.
And that raises a good point that we didn't actually probably talk too much about. Sorry, Yvonne. Was
fine.
Around having to tolerate some of that discomfort in doing it. That, when we're sitting down to work, rarely are we going to be over the moon and super happy about doing that. Most often we will feel like, I don't really want to do this, or I'm bored or whatever. So we're going to have to work with being in that state. So having to tolerate a bit of that discomfort to do it, to get the payoff at the end, that we get that, the positive feelings, the happiness, the relief, the proudness of ourselves at the end of it, rather than at the beginning.
Yeah. Also just working towards that reward, recognizing that. Yeah. And I understand that, sitting with discomfort, I'm sure we'll be covering that in a different podcast, because they'll probably come up over and again. So when can we expect
that?
Sorry?
So we cover that quite a lot in our webinar, because it is such a big part of procrastination. So come along to learn a bit more about how to get comfortable with those uncomfortable feelings.
Yeah, I imagine that's another hot topic, and I imagine that is such a big area for discussion as well. So stay tuned to the listeners. But on the other hand, so when can we expect to attend another one of your fabulous workshops or webinars, guys?
We've got one coming up very soon in October.
Oh, awesome.
The first week of October. So the 5th of October, I think it's a Wednesday.
Right. Okay.
In the afternoon. So check out our website to join in on that.
Yeah, great. And so it's online, isn't it, at the moment?
At the moment, yeah.
Okay. Great. Well, there you are, folks. So I hope we can start putting in practice what we put off during the time when we procrastinate. So as Megan had said, check out the Counselling Services website to register for the webinars and more tips to handle procrastination. So I'd like to thank my guests. So thank you, Emma and Megan, for taking the time out in your busy schedule to have a chat with us. And we hope that you will join us again in our future discussion and or podcast episodes. Thanks again.
Thanks, Yvonne.
Thank you for having us.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us today on the Counselling Armchair. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and learned a useful thing or two. Have a great week, and just remember that life can be amazing. See you next time.
Isn't life so amazing? Sometimes it can get crazy, but hey, that's okay. We've got another day to make mistakes and say sorry. There's no sense in our worry, 'cause all we can do is try our best to make it through with love.